Thank you very much for joining today's online event about securing the future. We'll talk about OT and IT security in digital substations. I'm here today with Daniel from Fortinet. My name is Jos from BelowTech. Before we start, you have the chance to ask questions at any time. At the end, we'll take enough time to answer hopefully all of the questions. So please use the chance and ask them during the session. Regarding the agenda, we'll have a short introduction about Fortinet and Welotec, talk a little bit about difference between IT and OT security, the substation layout, and then we are looking into the functionality of firewalls and also the next generation features of firewalls and how to use them. So what makes it special about new features that make the life much easier for OT engineers and also for IT personnel. We'll also focus a little bit about virtualization, how to run Fortinet firewall and other IT and OT security features on a BelowTech substation server, looking into the partnership between Welotec and Fortinet, and then coming to your questions and answers. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you. So good morning. Also from my side, my name is Daniel Buhmann. I'm Principal Systems Engineer for OT at Fortinet, located in Germany. Before we start with the topic, just a short introduction of Fortinet, what we are, who we are, what we are doing. So Fortinet is one of the biggest cybersecurity vendors in the world. We are on the market more than 20 years. We were founded in the year 2000. Currently, we have well over 600,000 customers and more than 50 different cybersecurity products in our portfolio. So everybody knows us from our firewall, from the FortiGate. It was the first unified threat management firewall, like we called it. And there are lots more currently in our portfolio. And our mission is to secure people, devices, and data everywhere. So it doesn't matter if it's in the IT, in the OT, if it's on-prem, if it's virtualized, if it's in the cloud. So everywhere where you can have security, we will help you to secure your product. And OT is one of our focus markets. That's why we are talking about substation security here today. And next slide, please. And our footprint, the footprint of Fortinet is global. So we are just not located in the US where our headquarters is. We are located all over the world. We have development and support centers in many countries. For example, here in my region, the headquarters in France, near Tunis and Sophia Antipolis, our main headquarters in Sunnyvale in California. So we are located all over the world. And that's also one of our advantages because our support centers are also available around the clock and all over the world, wherever you are. We are currently larger than 12,000 employees. So pretty much growth in the last few years. So yeah, so pretty big cybersecurity vendor. So back to you, Jos.
Thank you, Daniel. So a few words about BelowTech. So BelowTech is headquartered in Germany, and we're working with energy companies around the globe, especially with transmission and distribution grid companies, but also with different vendors. We did more than 300 large-scale projects all over the globe, from high-voltage direct current substations to transmission substations and also distribution substations, and always focus on reliable computing and bringing IT and OT inside of the substations. We have a very strong OT and IT background. We are founded in 1969, so we are more than 50 years young. In industrial automation, we have more than 50 years of experience, and we are partnering with the global vendors for substation automation, but also with the leading companies in IT and OT security. Our solutions are certified for substations, for example, IEC 61850-3 and IEEE 1613. looking a little bit in the substation layout, how to use firewalls, especially with a focus on the traditional scope of firewalls. And this is where you have different levels. Usually you have a control center, and that's somehow connected and getting more and more connected in the world. And this is usually connected to the station level of a substation. And in the station level, you usually have a firewall that is protecting all incoming and outgoing traffic. You can also use the firewall and also traditional firewalls pretty easily with segments of the different network traffic. So you can segment your network that you protect different assets and communication between different assets. So it can secure the communication of substation automation systems, but also IDs and the data that is going between those things. In addition to that, firewalls protect against unauthorized access, unauthorized protocols, and unauthorized connections between different things. So this will help you to secure your data, make your confidentiality, and also gives you opportunities and solutions for remote access in a connected world. But before we come to the points, I'll hand over to Daniel, that he will go a little bit about cyber threats and emerging cyber threats.
Okay, so there are lots of challenges in the OT space. So most of you know we have a long lifespan, how long the systems are running, how long they have to run. So many of these industrial control systems lack security by design. So once they were created, there was no security. Nobody was talking about IT security. Everybody was talking about an air gap or using their own network. No data is coming in or exported outside of the control system network. And it was a few years ago. Time has changed. And now everything is interconnected. People are using 5G IoT connections to any cloud services, collecting data, monitoring everything they can monitor, using many connections in and out, interconnecting SAP or whatever tools they're using. So the attack surface is expanding, and there are many new threats coming up. One thing you have to think about is remote access. How are you connecting to your control system, to your substation? How do you control these remote connections? Because most of the times it's not only the company operating the substations, it's also the OEM or the system integrator connecting to the system. How are you making sure that their systems are secure, that they are not bringing in the ransomware everybody fears about? And on top of that, there are many industry-specific regulations coming up. There's the IEC 62443, there's NIST 800, there's for Europe, there's the NIS coming up in the next year. So many new regulations are coming up. You have to comply to. So yeah, there's many things you have to look at, and that's a lot of challenges. And one of the reasons we are talking here is because we want to show you what you can do about it, how you can solve these challenges to get more secure. And if you move to the next slide, Jos. And if we look at the industry, so many organizations agree what I just said, because there are many of these industrial companies or organizations telling about it. There's the SANS Institute, for example, that says, okay, there are many incidents coming for ICS. There were incidents in the past. I will show you a timeline in the next slide. Also, Gartner is telling me that the OT environments that were traditionally separated are no longer completely isolated. So also the interconnection is coming. Everybody is connected. Everybody is using IoT. They want to monitor, to learn from their systems. They want to improve the systems, to raise the availability by using these kind of monitoring features. And yeah, it's impacting your security. The long lifespan, we already talked about the lifespan. It's usually it's between 15 or 30 or even more years that the control systems are used because they're really expensive. It's expensive to change the system. It's expensive to update from a Windows 7 to Windows 11 because you have to replace all your automation equipment as well in most cases. So it's really hard to update these systems, and that's why there's a long lifespan. And there are many incidents that are not reported because in the past, many companies weren't monitoring all of their OT equipment for security incidents. So if there was a failure, if there was a system not working any longer, they couldn't know if it's a security incident or not. So all these reasons are why we are talking here today. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that there's a long timeline of OT incidents, of things we saw in the past year. So it all started to come into our minds with Stuxnet already 13 years ago. So the Iranian nuclear program was attacked, and unfortunately, this malware not only propagated in Iran, it propagated all over the world in many control systems. And after this, the people saw more of these OT specific attacks. So it's not only critical infrastructure, so there are a lot of dams of power generation, power distribution, whatever systems are attacked, but it's also production, it's the automotive, it's the pharmacy, it's chemical, it's whatever industry you see in the OT is attacked, and there are many, many more of these things. Not all are on these timelines. It's just the biggest attacks, but I'm pretty sure you heard about most of them because currently in the news, you hear about any ransomware attack or whatever we see every day. And next slide, please. And what we can give you is our Fortinet approach. So we can help you with secure your operational technology, not only in the substation, but also maybe in the control center or in everything in between, or if there's maybe a small power generation or anything you're using, we can also secure this. And what we can do, there's a secure connectivity. We can help you to connect your substations, your control center, all your locations with secure connections, because our firewalls can help you to build up secure connections, not only to connect your locations, but also to securely connect these. We can also help you to secure your remote access. So whoever's connecting from the remote here, your people, the industrial control system vendor, or any system integrator, whoever is connecting via remote access, we can help you secure these connections and to make sure that no malware or any bad actions are coming into your network. We can help you with the convergence of the IT and OT. So there's also, maybe there could be a converged SOC, or if you're using two SOCs, a IT SOC and an OT SOC for monitoring, you can send data from one to the other and exchange data, because it's important if there's an attack in the IT that the OT world knows, or vice versa, if it's on the OT that the IT knows. And so we can help you do this. And on top of that, not only securing the connections and securing the people, we can help you to look into the things that are happening. So we have AI-powered security services. For example, the industrial security services as part of our OT signatures, where we can look into your connections, we can look into your data and tell you, yes, this is ISE 104, this is ISE 61850, this is DNP3, whatever protocols you're using. And we can show you, yes, that's the data you're expecting, that's the connection you're expecting, and we can help you to secure it. And the next slide, please. And coming back to the risk, yes, OT risk is proportional to OT connectivity. The more you connect, the higher your risk is. I think that should be clear. But we have a few numbers of our 2022 State of Operational Technology and Cybersecurity report. That's a paper we are giving out once a year. You can download it on our homepage. So just a few numbers of these. So 9 out of 10 OT organizations experienced at least one intrusion in the past year. That's 78% had 3 or more intrusions, which is clearly, yeah, there's more focus on security, and it's higher than in 2021. I think everybody should agree that the risk is getting higher. Also, the impact is also growing. If you look at the picture on the right, you see the bars, most of the bars are growing, or at least are on the same level than the year before. So the operational outage is really high. So it's impacting safety, it's impacting revenue. Think about it. So once there is the ransomware, or once there is an attack, how long do you need to get your system back up and running? How much does it cost you to get your system back up and running? So that's something you have to think about before, and you can secure your control system or your substation to make sure that these things don't happen, or if they happen, they stay in a smaller part of your network, depending on how you set up your network and your security. And if you go one slide further, and the same as Jos just showed, there are different levels, not only in a substation network, but also in the IT and OT network. If you look at the Purdue level, Fortinet can help you secure all of these levels. So, like I said, not just cloud and IT and the boundary between IT and OT. We have security devices you can put into your OT network. We can help you to see what the risk or what vulnerabilities you're currently having. And we have many different products that can help you. Today, we are talking about the integration of the FortiGate and the Substation server of Welotec. But with this firewall, you cannot just do firewall features. You can also maybe extend your network on a layer 2 basis if you have to route some layer 2 protocols like Goose, or maybe you want to set up an SD-WAN for OT. It's not just an IT feature where you interconnect your business locations. You can also use SD-WAN for OT and make sure that you have different connections like MPLS or DSL or 4G, 5G, whatever you want to use, and to make sure your control system data, your process is always running, because if one of these connections is shutting down, is crashing, you can make sure that the OT data is rerouted through different connection. And maybe if DSL or MPLS is going down, you can use 5G to forward the data and make sure it reaches the control room. So there are many more things we can offer, and I think the main thing, that's something we are also going to be talking about in some of the next slides, are the security services. So currently we know more than 2,000 OT applications. So the OT application signatures can help you not only understand your network and understand your connections, but also to secure it. I will show to you in a few more slides. And on top of that, there's the intrusion prevention or intrusion detection, however we want to call it, however you want to use it, where we have more than 500 just OT threat signatures, just for OT applications and protocols. And to explain the difference between both, yeah, thank you. I just said there's intrusion prevention, IPS, and application control. So IPS signatures is for the detection of exploits, of vulnerabilities that are exploited. So if there's an exploit in IEC 61850 or an exploit in a Siemens, ABB, Schneider, whatever application, that's something you can see with IPS or with intrusion detection if you just want to have it monitored, reported, or intrusion prevention if you want to block it. And application control is for protocol detection. You see your OPC, your IEC 104, or whatever protocol you're using. For every connection, you will get a message saying, okay, what connection, what type of connection, what kind of data is sent through my network, and you can control it on a message level. That's also something you will see in the next slides, because you can see if there's a reading, a writing, a switching or configuration, or whatever command is going on the protocol itself. So if someone is turning on a machine or switching something in a network, or whatever is done through the ICS protocol, you can see it, you can allow it, or you could even block it to show, okay, there doesn't have to be a configuration coming from this direction, or my writing commands are just allowed, or my configuration is just allowed from my engineering workstation and not from the HMI, or whatever you want to control. You can do it on this. And like I said, so there's more than 2,000 different signatures in the application control, but the main protocols that are used in the substation are ISE 104, DNP3, OPC, ISE 61850, Modbus, whatever other OT protocol you're using. So Jos, you can take over again.
Great, thank you, Daniel. So now we talk about extension of the firewall features from Fortinet, for example, with the ISIT from RADIFlow. So on the left side, you see the Welotec substation server, and what you can run on that is a hypervisor. So for virtualization and putting different applications on it. One could be a virtualized firewall from Fortinet, the FortiGate firewall. Another one could be a virtual IDS system, so a system that is detecting all the network assets that you have, mapping them, and help you. Virtualization helps you to run more than one security application on a single machine. And this is very important if you want to extend your network, because you don't need to build in new hardware. You can just install new software if you have new requirements from the regulation perspective, or if new cyber threats happen, you just install an additional cybersecurity software. And those software systems can also be integrated. Daniel, can you talk a little bit about the integration between RADIFlow and Fortinet?
Yeah, so Fortinet invented something called the Fortinet Security Fabric. I will talk about it later. But one of the fabric integration is the integration of RADIFlow, of the industrial IDS from RADIFlow. There's also integrations for more of these OT IDS, but we tested RADIFlow on the Welotec server together with our firewall. So like Jos said, it's running on the same hardware. You just have to have one hardware with the IDS, with our firewall on it. So there's secure connections through our API. So the RADIFlow tool is talking to our firewall. The firewall is talking the other direction to the RADIFlow tool. And once there's a new connection or a new asset discovered, RADIFlow will push it into our firewall as a trust object or as a connection attempt. If there's a connection from the HMI to the RTU or whatever connection is initiated, the RADIFlow will recognize it and will push this information into our firewall. And the firewall can be used on the one hand to already have the assets that are discovered by RADIFlow, so that they can be used in the firewall policy, or it could create firewall policies. So on the one hand, it could help you to create your firewall rule set if you don't know your connections that are happening in your OT network, because most of the time the communication is unknown to our customers in these networks, and they are having a hard time creating the firewall policies because they simply don't know what is happening in their network. And if there's some kind of malicious activity that RADIFlow recognizes, you could also use this know-how, this information to block it in the firewall. So RADIFlow can push a firewall policy into our FortiGate to block these kind of connections. You can always you can always make sure that it's done passively or actively, however you want to do it. So if you want to have a look at it before an automatic firewall rule is created, you can also do it and activate the firewall policy on your own. But if you're doing this, you have to know that you're losing some time in case of a real attack, or in case of a ransomware spreading in your network. Move to the next slide, please. So this is the first the screenshot from our firewall showing the integration. So like I said, in the address objects that you can use in your firewall rule set, you see the ISID HMI 102, ISID PLC 100, ISID PLC 101. So these are the devices that are recognized, that are found, the assets that are found by the RADIFlow server and that are pushed into our firewall. You always see it by the name because there's always the ISID at the beginning of the name. It's always put there that you know that's something coming from the RADIFlow system. And in the rule set, the same in the rule set. If you have a connectivity from the PLC in, PLC out, HMI in and out, you can also let the tool create the firewall rules like I explained before, with the accept or deny action, if you want to block, if you want to allow it, or if you want to have a look into it before activating it. So that's what you can do with the RADIFlow integration. And if we come back to the, thank you. If we come back to the things I said a few slides before, there are different, these different additional features on top of just the packet filtering. If you want to use our next generation features like the application control, in this screenshot, it's a slightly older screenshot. You see that there are like 1,700 industrial signatures included. So it's more today, but still it's quite a large number. On top of all these business and email and peer-to-peer and social media and whatever kind of protocols you're using. So we are separating it in different categories. So for example, the Microsoft or remote desktop or SSH or HTTP or whatever connections are on the one hand in the categories you see here, and all these industrial protocols are in the category industrial with all their separations. And in the second screenshot below, you see that there's the IEC 6875.104, so the IEC 104 protocol. So you see that there's a start of a connections. You see that there's transfer in, transfer out, so data coming in and data getting out of the network of the RTU. You see what type ID there's used, what ASDU address is addressed, what's the cause of transmission. So you can see all these parameters as well, and you could also use this if you want to go one step further, not only to see if it's what kind of command is sent in your OT network. You can also go one step further and see all the arguments, all the details, if you want to go down on the address level and allow or block some connections. Sorry. So some of our customers are even exporting all these type IDs and all their parameters from the control system and exporting them into the firewall as firewall rules. It should just allow to make sure that the data that's coming in from all the substations to the control center is exactly what they are expecting to come in. So they will see directly if there's anything they are not expecting, maybe from some kind of address they are not having. So maybe that's a hacker trying to send data in to impact the control system. Next slide, please. So if you look into just the IEC 104, you see there's quite a lot of different signatures. It's more than 100 alone in the IEC 104 protocol. On the one hand, you can see, yes, that this is IEC 104, or yes, this is whatever kind of protocol, but you can step in and see, okay, what kind of connection is this, what kind of data is coming in, getting out, like I said before. The second feature we want to propagate, the second main feature on the next slide, is the vulnerability shielding or virtual patching or intrusion prevention, however you want to call it. What we saw when we go to our customers and tell them we want to implement intrusion prevention in your OT network, they're telling us that it's not allowed, it's an active technology, nobody is going to block anything in their OT networks and so on. So it's really difficult to argument because the wording IPS intrusion prevention is somehow burned in this word. If we are talking about vulnerability shielding or virtual patching, on the other hand, everybody wants to use it, although it's the same technology. So what so people, our customers, need to understand what IPS is and how you can use it to your advantage. So what we can do with the intrusion prevention. So also, again, we can look into the connectivity, we can look into the data that is sent in and out from your control system. And we will see what kind of application is used, what kind of protocol is used, and if there's a vulnerability, if there's an attack, if there's an exploit available, there will be a signature on our firewall, and we can make this visible for you, and we can block these kind of harmful connections. For example, in a screenshot, you will see some ABB signatures. For example, there's MicroSCADA in it. It's also a tool used in the substations, but there's also different vendors. And it's not only ABB, although it's at the beginning of the alphabet. That's why you see it here in the screenshot. And what we can do, for example, I always explain it on the example of the BlueKeep vulnerability. So BlueKeep is a vulnerability that came out a few years ago, impacting Windows Remote Desktop. So if you are using Remote Desktop to connect to your OT server or client, and you have the malware on your laptop that tries to propagate through the Remote Desktop protocol, once you open the connection to your OT network, this malware will move to your OT system. It's totally normal with these kind of malwares. And if you're using the IPS signatures in our firewall, you still are able to open the remote desktop connection. You still are able to work on your server, but all these harmful packages are filtered out and reported. So that's what virtual patching or intrusion prevention or virtual shielding, or however you call it, is doing. It's not blocking anything you want, but it's keeping out the things you don't want. Sorry, and that's how you can use it. So in the end, it's called virtual patching because it gives you some time before you can install or apply the patches to your control system servers and clients, because most of the times you have to wait for approval from the ICS vendor before you can install a patch. And if there's a critical vulnerability with our signatures, you can get this time because it's not exploitable via the network any longer. Next slide, please. So in coming back to what I explained before, our Fortinet security fabric, I said that's something we invented many years ago. So in the beginning, we wanted to have a basis for our products to talk to each other. So our firewall, our switches, our access points, our CM, whatever kind of systems you're using are interconnected, are exchanging data. And a few years ago, we opened it with the open ecosystem to third-party vendors. So we saw already that RADIFlow is one of these third parties that are included in an open ecosystem. Welotec is also one of these. We also announced a partnership already 2 years ago. So we tested this integration. So we are running on a Welotec systems. There are a few more things we are currently testing. And so all of our products are mostly tested against other third-party tools. And in an ecosystem currently, there are more than 500 different third-party tools and solutions that you can work with. So if you want to add more things to these, to your security system, like we just said, there could, for example, be some kind of ticketing system or some kind of monitoring tool. So once something is recognized, so RADIFlow sees any kind of vulnerability, pushes it to our firewall creates the policy. Also, there's, for example, a ticket automatically opened in your ticket system to make sure you see that there's something happening, or you have to activate the policy if you wanted to do it this way. So, so there are many more integrations that you could use. So back to you, Jos.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So let's talk a little bit about virtualization and why it makes sense to virtualize different applications on one single server. So in general, firewall or an IDS system is a software. And the software is running on a computer. If you have a hardware firewall, it's extremely similar to a standard computer. So if you have special servers for substations, it can also meet the harsh environmental conditions within substations to be available under high EMC levels, temperature fluctuations, but also in case of earthquakes and those things, you need to have hardware that is certified against ISC 61850-3 and IEEE 1613, so which are environmental conditions. And with virtualization, what you can do is you can replace several bare metal installations with a single box. So you can run a firewall virtualized, you can run IDS virtualized, you can add a log server and many more on a single machine. And if you have integrations between those, for example, the firewalls with the IDS, as we have seen with RADIFlow, you can also let them talk to each other and integrate each other. Besides OT security and IT security applications, you can use virtualization also for running your HMI, your substation gateway, engineering workstation, and many more. It not only helps you to reduce the amount of hardware, but you have also less different hardware. So if you need to go for type approval, you just have a single hardware that you need to type approve. If you want to have additional provisioning, it makes it much faster. So you can just install software instead installing a new hardware. So you can also easily add new applications. So for example, if you start with a firewall and then you realize, well, to increase my IT and OT security, I need, for example, the IC from RADIFlow, can just install it and integrate it without going there and putting new hardware. And virtualization with a hypervisor and the different virtual machines also help you to increase the availability of the whole system. In addition to that, in case that something is not working or is breaking down, disaster recovery options are extremely much faster in a software world than in a hardware world. Looking a little bit on the different types of virtualization, on the left side, you see a typical OT and IT security setup. So you have a virtualized firewall, you have an intrusion detection system and a log server, and you have the hardware independence of these systems because it's software. You have, through virtualization, you have a segmentation of the different software systems, like if you put it on different hardware. You can manage those different virtual machines remotely. And if you're using the Fortinet system also in other parts and the security fabric, for example, in your cloud, in your data center, you have a consistent security fabric through all of your layers. Like in cloud and data center, internet firewall and so on. And this is, in addition to that, you can also add platform security, network security, and application security to each virtual machine. So also if you, for example, run a HMI substation automation system at the engineering workstation, and in addition to that, the Fortinet firewall, you can also monitor the traffic that is moving between those machines, that is not going over the network, but having virtual switching ports between each other. So the Welotec IEC 61850-3 substation server, we call it RSA-PC, can be used for station bus applications like gateway HMI, as mentioned. It can be used for cybersecurity applications. We are also working for process bus applications so that you can have virtual merging units, virtual measurements, but also virtual protection functions. If you're looking at virtualization, it's really mainstream in the IT world, and non-virtualized systems in the data center are probably not existing. The reason behind is that it makes your life much easier, even if you have just a single application virtualized. So you can have easy updates, rollback, easy backups, snapshot of the current state of a virtual machine. So not only securing the software, but also with all the data inside. It helps you with maintenance and especially also with hardware replacement, because you don't need to reconfigure, reinstall, just start the existing virtual machine on a different hardware platform. Looking a little bit in the Welotec Fortinet integration, so what you see is the Welotec Substation server. And there we run a hypervisor, for example, in this example, Microsoft Hyper-V, but we can also run VMware ESXi. And then we have multiple virtual machines. And these virtual machines that you see on the left and on the right side could be an HMI, could be an ISIT from RADIFlow, could also be engineering workstation or substation gateway. And all the data that is communicating between those different virtual machines can be secured in a transparent mode from the Fortinet firewall, so that all the traffic is understood, is monitored, so that you can make sure that it is protected. And of course, what you can also do is use the virtual machine that you're running with Fortinet on top, not only to secure the communication between the different virtual machines, but also to secure the communication to the substation automation system, HMI and power quality analysis, and any other system like in a traditional firewall. We also have a solution brief together with Fortinet. You find it on the Welotec website or on the Fortinet website, which is explaining how to do it and what kind of benefits you have from the full solution. So it's a Fortinet Fabric ready solution and can be used at any time. Perfect. So we now come to the Q&A session. So first of all, thank you very much. And let me start with the questions. I see that there are plenty. Well, the first one is coming from Jan. He's asking how Fortinet supports Middle East, UAE and KSA, for example.
So, yeah. So we have locations like I said all over the world. So in fact, our parts of our OT product management are located in UAE. So if you want to have contact to us, you can use my contact data, and you can send me an email. I will forward it to my colleagues. You can talk to Welotec, and we'll arrange the contact through them, however you want to do it.
Perfect. Yeah. So we also did work together with Fortinet in UAE, in Middle East quite often. So it should work without any issue. So next question. We must not allow using the term IT-OT convergence. We must reject that term. IT and OT must be separate and can be securely interconnected, but never converge. You want to start, Daniel?
I totally understand your argumentation, and I partly agree with you. Yes, but currently, yeah, that's the state of the technology we are in today. So the world is changing. So there is IT and OT are still mostly separated, but we are growing into something where everything is interconnected, everything is converged, and there are already servers and clients coming from the IT. There's no proprietary systems that are used. There are many connections already used. There's IoT with some sensors sending data to some cloud databases, whatever you're using. So I think it's a progress. I agree with you and don't agree with you at the same time. So so yes and no. It's still separated, and but we are on a journey to these convergence, to these interconnectivities.
Thank you, Daniel. So next question: do Fortinet have products compliant to 62443 or NIST 853 framework?
So our products are compliant but not certified. It's difficult to certify just a firewall or whatever kind of security tool you're using in the OT, but we are part of a certified control system through some control system vendors. So if you're looking into the Siemens, Schneider, ABBs, whatever of the world, most of the times you can find Fortinet firewalls included in their baseline, in their framework that is certified to IEC 62443. And we implement many of these NIST and IEC or whatever kind of standard features you want to have. We implement them, we match them, we map them in our firewall, in our monitoring system, in our whatever kind of tool we are using. If you're using our honeypot, if you're using whatever you want to use, though, there's a mapping of these features. There's a Purdue mapped asset database. There's a risk-based approach for IEC in our monitoring system. So there are many things we already included.
Okay, and we have the next question. Will the recording of the session be available? Let me answer that. Yes. So we stream the session live on YouTube, so you can see it there. And we'll also have versions that we add to YouTube afterwards. So just check the Welotec channel. And if you take part in this webinar, you'll also get a follow-up email with a recording available so that you can share it. So now a little longer question. Let me read it. You're talking about the risks of OT-IT integration and allowing these protocol-based communications into the OT. However, at the same time, you're only recommending software-based protection, which still carries the same risk as they are entirely bidirectional. Would you support an architecture which uses physical protection of the OT by way of unidirectional gateways, data diodes?
So if you can make sure that there's just a unidirectional connection, yes, you could use data diodes. Unfortunately, it's not something Fortinet can offer you. We just have the firewall, and yeah, you just can, with our firewalls, you could copy maybe a data diode. It's not the same, I know, but with the rule set, you can make sure that the connections are just coming in or getting out of the network. And yes, also it's just a protocol-based communication or a firewall-based, whatever you want to use in a firewall. That's something we can offer. And yes, if you want to use the unidirectional gateways, you could use these. Yes, we totally, as I said, we can't offer them. From my point of view, I know they are quite common in some parts of the world. Here in Germany, in the German-speaking market, I didn't see one implemented at all. So many people are talking about them, but I didn't see them implemented here in Germany, for example.
Yeah, maybe to add something. So data diodes increase security. So if you need to connect something that you don't want to connect, for some reason, a data diode could be a solution. But on the other hand, you have very high integration cost. So you need to select a protocol that you want to have. You need to select the data that you want to share. It makes the system more complex. And the data is unidirectional, so you don't have real connectivity. But of course, for some assets, it might be necessary to have a data diode. Because usually you get the benefit of having it connected, at least unidirectional. Okay, then the next one. Can you please explain how IPS can help to protect against zero-day attack?
Yes, it won't help against zero-day because IPS is a signature-based approach. So with IPS, you can just block what you know. So it's not helping against a zero-day. On the other hand, if you have your rule set, if you have a tool like the RADIFlow server we just explained, or if you have your firewall rule set adapted to your network communication, then the zero-day or the attack is something that is not known, that is not normal, and it's falling out of your baseline. So you will see that there's something happening that you don't know. If your rule set is okay, if you have a secure rule set, it will block most of it, as I can say, but IPS alone won't help against zero-day. If you want a zero-day protection, if you want to make your system as secure as possible, you will need more than just a firewall. So, for example, there's an endpoint detection response. Our FortiEDR can help you successfully block zero days even on OT systems.
Great, thank you. So two questions regarding virtualization. The first one, how virtualization will improve disaster recovery? So let me answer that. So if you are doing virtualization, you can take a snapshot of your virtual machines. This means like taking a picture of the current state, and you're continuously doing that. And also if you have some issues with software updates, and so you take a copy of the existing virtual machine before you do a software update, and in case something fails, you can just move back to the older system. In case that you have an issue with the hardware, you can just take the virtual machine from one computer. If you have second one computer installed, you can just move it to the second one and start it there. And also the typical hypervisors that we're working with, and this is also the next question, which hypervisors we support. So we can, for example, support Hyper-V from Microsoft. We are working with VMware, ESXi, but we are also working with open source hypervisors. So in general, we can work with most hypervisors and also including real-time hypervisors, for example, from Winterware. So, and those different hypervisors have tools to well, make your disaster recovery, getting back online very easy and fully automated, depending a little bit on which hypervisor you're using. Then we have another question. Does Fortinet agree to virtualize their firewall in the Substation server and sell software license only? Daniel.
I think that's the reason we are here today. So yes, you can get all of our products or most of our products as appliance, as hardware appliance, or as virtual appliance, or as a solution in a public cloud. So yes, we totally agree to virtualize our firewalls. That's what we tested with Welotec, and that's why we are here today.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, as the only firewall in substation level, how this can protect a goose message between IDs? That's interesting.
That's interesting. I totally agree. So in this approach we just presented, we just showed a firewall in the substation level to monitor, to control the traffic coming in and out from the substation. In a deeper approach, you can route risk traffic maybe through our firewall or through our switches if you want to separate these kind of devices, and you could route them through our devices. For example, what we could do as one approach, if you're not using only our firewall, if you also are using a switch from Fortinet, each switch could also use the same kind of functionalities, the same kind of security features we just presented for the firewall. So you can also see on a switch in the same VLAN what kind of data is being sent from one device to the other. if it's a IEC 61850 or IEC 104, whatever kind of data is sent between these devices. But if you're going in this deep, I would recommend not to block something actively, just to make sure you're seeing it, because you have to make sure your systems are running, it's up and running, and you just can block it if you know what you are doing, because it's a journey to get there. So normally customers start with the approach we just presented. It's a firewall on a substation level, and with time, with their security maturity growing, they're starting to implement more and to go deeper into the protocols itself.
Okay, thank you. Can you explain virtual patching step by step? Daniel, that's something for you.
Virtual patching step by step. So virtual patching is there are two ways you could do virtual patching. So what we just presented is virtual patching on a network level. It's just suitable for vulnerabilities that can be exploited through the network. So it just works if, like the example I said with the remote desktop, if there's a vulnerability in a remote desktop protocol, for example, or in any OT protocol or application, and it's exploited via the network. If it's on the machine, on the server or client or whatever itself, then there must be a host-based approach for virtual patching. Again, coming back to our endpoint security, to the 40 EDR, for example, there's also a feature called virtual patching. It's doing pretty much the same. It's seeing there is an application that's vulnerable to some kind of exploit. And if you want to exploit these vulnerability, the endpoint software also can block these malicious packages. So it's both ways are not patching your system. We are not installing any patch. We are not rolling out any updates or whatever you're expecting. We are just making sure that these vulnerabilities cannot be exploited. So you will block the malicious things. So some customers that have OT systems that simply can't be patched, there is no more patch. The vendor is not allowing to install a patch. They just install the systems, but they are not operating them. Whatever reason there is not to install a patch, are using our virtual patching to, because they can't install it. But other customers that can install these patches, but have to wait for the qualification through the ICS vendor, or need time to install it because they need a downtime of their OT system. They can use it to buy time until the patch is applied, because still their system can be secure. So because the malicious packages are blocked. So that's the wording virtual patching.
Thank you so much. So another very question: how you have convinced substation clients to allow placing IPS in a live substation?
So that's the journey we are on. So we are not convincing customers to use it. So we are not pushing our customers to use it. We are showing our customers what is possible. And sometimes, so like I said, the first customer who came to us and telling, okay, we want these plausibility control of the IEC 104 communication, came to us and said, hey, we have your firewalls, we have the intrusion detection, and we have the application control. We are using it for a few years, and now we want to actively block something. So the customers are coming to us and telling us, hey, this is the idea they have, and we're helping them to find the right approach. And so like I said, it's a journey. So as always, OT is years behind IT, and what you see today in IT security is most probably something you will see in a few years coming in the OT. And IPS was the same. So a few years ago, nobody wanted to use it in the IT world, and now it's totally common.
Okay, and we have the next question. Can I virtualize a firewall, IDS, and HMI on the same machine? Well, let me answer that from a BelowTech perspective. Yes, of course you can. And it absolutely makes sense, because if you have hardware there, and especially firewall and IDS can be easily interconnected with this API, And if you have a HMI, and probably also you can build a connection to the IDS and to the firewall, so that the substation layout that you have in the HMI is probably the basics for your firewall rules and what the IDS detects and marks as allow it or disallow it. Then we have another question regarding if we have a presence in Saudi Arabia. Well, Fortinet has, right? At least with people. Yeah. And we are working with partners there. For example, with Siemens, GE, but we also directly work with the end customers. But we don't have a presence there. Then the next question, why do I need IEC 61850-3 for firewall? Let me answer that as well. So IEC 61850-3 is the environmental standard. It describes the impact of EMC, of temperature fluctuations, but also vibrations and shocks, for example, for earthquakes. This is very important because if you run a firewall and it is part of your critical system, then it also needs to withstand the harsh conditions as your control equipment, as your protection equipment, as your IDs. And this is ensured with the IEC 61850-3 standard. Okay, next one for Fortinet. Does Fortinet provide like a maintenance service to keep the system updated?
I'm not pretty sure what you mean with maintenance service. So what we can offer you is, if you are buying our firewalls, normally you will have a service and support contract in the firewalls, which not only includes service and support for your for the product itself, but also the capability to update signatures, to get new protocols once they are included into our database, and so on. So we are not offering some maintenance to work on your firewall policies or on a firewall configuration. That's something we are offering through our partner network.
Okay, thanks. So now a question for WelotTech. How does WelotTech service computer in countries in Middle East? There seem to be a lot of questions for Middle East. We can, of course, directly support from Germany, or we work with partners. On the one hand, we work with large system integrators, like Siemens, GE, ABB, Hitachi, and they can use it in the projects and install it there. But we also work with smaller system integrators that can do the service and support in that region. Okay, then we have the next one. I missed major part of the presentation. Can we get a controlled copy of the presentation in PDF format? Sure, you can get. So just get in contact with us, write the email, and we send it to you. It's not a problem at all. Another question regarding the hypervisors. I think we answered that already. Then another one. Why should I use an active technology like IPS and RISC to block my control process?
I think this question so is partly answered, and I will combine it with the next questions about the doubt of placing an IPS system into the cloud. So so why should I use an active technology like IPS and RISC to block my control system? Like I said, you have to know your connectivity, you have to know your communication. And with the IPS, you can make sure that just the unwanted things are blocked. If you're unsure about it, you could use it as IDS. You could just monitor it, you can learn from it, and you can see what's happening in your OT network, what's happening in your substation network. And you have to react manually if you're unsure about it. That's something that's totally normal. Some of our customers are using it like IPS, some are using it as IDS. It's depending on your experience in a security field in your OT network. So we don't tell you have to use it as an active system. But on the other hand, it can help you to raise your security level by a lot. So, and on the other hand, the second question, why do we need to place an IPS system in the cloud? Then what type, or what will be the type of cybersecurity? Will it be OT or IT cybersecurity? So we are not telling you to place the IPS in the cloud. So I just mentioned that our firewall is also available in the cloud. So everything is based in the firewall itself. Everything is on-prem. If you have the firewall on a Welotec server, if it's virtualized there, it's happening there. You just have to make sure the firewall knows of the vulnerabilities if you want to use IDS or IPS. And but you can get these signature updates from our support webpage. You can download them. You don't have to have a internet connection up and running to get these updates. You can manually install them, manually push them. You can spread them via central management, whatever you want to use, but no, there's no cloud connection and no internet connection needed.
Okay, great. Daniel, we're a little bit over time already. So there's still a few more questions open. I would suggest that we collect them and answer them afterwards by email. I would like to thank you all very much for your time. It was a great event. Daniel, also thank you very much for your time and for your detailed explanations and answering all those questions. We have another session which will be on Thursday afternoon European time, which is mainly for the Americas, but also UK. So which is in a different time zone and still sleeping. So if you have colleagues over there, please invite them to that other session. You find it on our webpage or on LinkedIn. It would be great to have you here. Everybody will get the email with a follow-up with a link to the recording, and we had quite a lot of questions also regarding the slides. So I think we will also send out the slides. If you have further questions, please get in contact with Daniel or me directly, or contact our colleagues over our websites, or probably also have a direct contact already. So get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you also from my side, and thank you for inviting me.